talking about study smarter strategies for helping students ace their midterms, their final exams. My name is Tara McLaughlin, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Claire Skiba. We are both customer success managers here at SmarterServices, and we work primarily with SmarterMeasure, and that is what we'll be talking about today. These are some webinars that we've been doing and hosting lately that are exclusive to our SmarterMeasure clients. Ways for you to get additional value add for, in this case, your students, to help them be successful in their exams and their studying strategies. A few housekeeping items. We will be recording this webinar, and we'll share the recording along with the slides and all of the free resources that we've created. And please share those with your students. If you have any questions, the chat feature is disabled, but you can use the Q&A feature in the doc area of the Zoom panel. So if you're sharing this with someone who might be brand new to SmarterMeasure at your institution, they may not have heard of SmarterMeasure, so we'll start there with just a brief synopsis of what SmarterMeasure is. It's a student service tool that helps evaluate a student's readiness for studying online or in technology-rich courses. It highlights their learning styles or preferences, their technical skills, their individual attributes. All of these skills are more of those non-cognitive skills, which are critical for students to be successful. It's not just a focus on their cognitive skills, right? Other abilities, other facets of the learner are equally important. SmarterMeasure provides a student with an individualized report, which highlights their strengths and spotlights any weaknesses, but in a positive light. Room for improvement, we never call it a weakness to the student. And all of this can help boost your student success rates and your retention rates, because we will help you identify where students need support based on these non-cognitive skills, so that you can reach out in a proactive manner and provide the support strategies. The way we divide SmarterMeasure up is via sections or scales, and within each scale, there are subscales. And we take a holistic approach to measuring these areas. So internal, external, and specific skills, as you see here. I will not read them verbatim, but individual attributes and life factors are key areas for students as far as the retention and success rates. But a lot of the other areas can be really helpful. If students have areas to improve in, they can boost those, set some realistic goals. Maybe it's around their technical skills or their keyboarding, and that can go a long way to helping them being successful. Why should you measure non-cognitive skills? It's often the answers to why students aren't engaging, whether it's in your coursework, if it's those first couple of weeks of classes, or maybe if you're an advisor, they're not really engaging with you. If you had those SmarterMeasure results and you could look into the students, peek into the students' report, you could see maybe they're not motivated. Maybe they don't have time to study or to meet with you because they're a single mom working a full-time job and all that goes along with that. Or maybe they have some apprehension. Maybe they've been working out in their career field for 20 years, and they don't know that they have what it takes to be a come back to school. Maybe they're reluctant about their technology skills, so some apprehension there. But these areas are more malleable and actionable than some of the other fixed predictors of success that are out there, like say first-gen status. Through self-awareness and strategies for support, you can make a big impact related to these specific skills. Speaking of college students and study strategies and skills, we've compiled a few stats for you to review. Like, for example, 68% of students report stress about their school and their day-to-day life keeps them up at night, which is huge. That's a huge number of students that are stressing about what they're doing in school. And 20% of college students have reported pulling an all-nighter to study for an upcoming exam at least once a month, which isn't conducive to their study habits or their sleep habits either. 23% of students keep track of to-do lists just by their memory, which I know in my case, that's not a very good strategy. 87% of students feel that if they had better organization and time management skills, that they would get better grades. It's often something that they're not being taught in high school. Um, so if they're not being taught that at home, then they're a little bit behind. So that's what we wanted to do with this webinar, was to help you with some strategies to help your students be successful in their studies. There are specific scales that we're going to touch on today within SmarterMeasure and subscales. We're going to look at place, which is a subscale within life factors. Individual attributes, we're going to look at 2 subscales, time management and locus of control. We're going to look at learning preferences and how that can play a role in students studying, and then reading rate and recall. So I just wanted to ask a question. Since you are a SmarterMeasure client, be sure that you're using these sections so that your students can take advantage of this knowledge and this insight if you're not already. So it all starts with creating a place to study that's appropriate for the learner. And that can be different based on what their preferences are. But we've given a few strategies here, like avoiding the kitchen table, avoiding couches, right? Areas where your roommates or the members of your household are more likely to congregate. That's not, you're going to have a lot of distractions if you're in an area where there's a lot of people. So find somewhere that you can carve out that's your own space. Make sure that you have your device so that, if it's your laptop, have all the material for that, like your charging cable so that it doesn't die on you, and access to reliable internet so that you can log on to the LMS and all of the different areas that you need to for your studies. Have your course materials or your textbooks, if those are with you. Have the paper, pen, flashcards, colored pencils, highlighters. Equip yourself with everything that you need so that you don't have to keep getting up and stopping your momentum in your studying to go grab that one piece, that one item that you forgot. We also have created certain resources. These are what we encourage you to share with your students. One is on a lot of these strategies here related to finding a place to study and take exams. Another area is time. Students are all busy. We understand that. So prioritizing the time that they do have is paramount, and making sure that they use that for studying, right? And having a consistent routine is key too. So there's some questions that students can ask themselves about how they're spending their time. Are they perhaps spending too much time on a certain task that's not conducive to studying, right? Maybe they're involved in extracurricular activity, intramural soccer or something, several nights out of the week. Maybe they can put that aside while they're involved in this extremely chaotic semester, and then pick that back up afterwards. Are they completing tasks they need to get done? Is there anything that they can delegate to someone else, right? So if you have children, right, and maybe instead of you unloading the dishwasher, have your children do that, or your roommates, right? So that you can use that time for studying. Also create a study schedule. This can look different, again, for every student based on their situation in life. But break down your day, your week, and your month. Look ahead, not just focus on the here and now. Allocate specific time blocks in that routine, and be consistent about it. Don't just say you're going to do something. Actually put yourself to task for doing those time blocks that you've reserved. And find a system, whatever that might be. There's so many tools out there, whether they're digital or like a traditional planner, whatever the student would prefer. Try a few of those and see what works best. But there's apps that you can use, like to track your daily habits. There's Way of Life and Strides. Those are some, we didn't create those, but we found them online. And one is for more Mac, like smartphone, Apple, what are they? iPhones. And the other one is more for Androids. So those can track your habits, so you can see where you're spending your time, and maybe you weren't aware that you were spending 5 hours a day on your phone. So you can take that time and spend that towards your studies. So it can track your good habits as well as bad habits. And then using a timer. Everybody on their phone, there's a timer, and you can use that and reward yourself after you've studied for a certain amount of time. We have some resources specific to this, time management strategies. One is for task planning and prioritization. I love this one because students can really be intentional. They can set their daily goals, have a to-do list, and rank them in order of priority. And then on the second page, they can focus on some school related activities. Maybe there's an exam coming up or midterm that they're studying for, or maybe they have a few and they also have a paper that's due. So they can plot everything out and they can visualize that. And also that helps with their prioritization. And a few others. Let's see. Here's one where they can see all, from 5 to 5, all, 24 hours in a day for the whole week. They can look, that's how they can plot out those blocks of time. Maybe they have to get up early and study for a couple hours before the kids wake up, or stay up later after everyone's already gone to bed. Okay. And now I'm going to hand the slide deck over to my colleague, Claire, and she's going to finish up the content for today.
Yes, thanks so much, Tara. And thank you all for joining us today. Tara and I have really enjoyed doing these webinars. I think they've been a positive, I think they've been really positive. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, especially with the resources that we're sharing. We're always creating new ones. So keep those suggestions coming. So like Tara mentioned, we're going to talk about a few other subscales and sections of SmarterMeasure, and one of them is the power of positive thinking. So in individual attributes, the subscale of locus of control. Positive thinking can really help us stay motivated. Our mindset can be one of our greatest assets. Understanding that we have control of our successes and our failures, and then not letting those setbacks discourage us, right? So one thing we can do as educators is to remind our students the following. No one has all the answers, right? So seeking guidance is actually a sign of a strength, not a weakness. Possibly visualizing your goals can be a powerful tool to help people stay motivated and continue to work towards them. And then one of my absolute favorites is daily gratitude. So the simple task of just writing things down that we're thankful for can really be a mindset change. It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have. And I think that can really make a tremendous impact on our outlook of life. And so one of the resources here is replacing negative thinking with positive affirmations. That's just like a one-page PDF. We do have all of these linked at the end of the slide deck, so you will have access to all of these. So please share them with your students. But that one just kind of highlights some of a few things I've talked about. Identifying that negative thinking, trying to get that out of your mindset. Self-affirmation, and then prioritize those areas that we need to change, right? So where do we see our negativity and how can we kind of shift that mindset? Next slide. So the learning styles, this is huge. So learning styles or learning preferences, whatever term you want to use, there is no right or wrong learning style. So in the student report, we do highlight the student's primary learning style, and not most people don't just have one, right? We have several, but the SmarterMeasure report gives specific examples for each learning style that the student can take back into their coursework and their study material and use that to their benefit. Next slide. So yeah, just a few of the learning styles. There are 7, and then that resource does break them out in more detail. But these are just some examples. So if you're an auditory learner, maybe you want to play music in the background while studying. I know when I'm working and I'm just kind of like working in my email, I don't have to have, strict focus, but I do have to have some sort of background noise. So I'm usually listening to podcast or music or something. The silence is what is my distraction in those times. Or a social learner, maybe join a study group. A visual learner, maybe using color coding. Yeah, Tara's going to bring that up. But as you can see here, this one is a 2-page PDF because there's more content, but it gives the students actual real examples. And so different techniques, and they're not all going to work for everybody. So that's kind of the nice thing about exploring your maybe not your primary learning style, but another one, and see if that helps you. Oh, yes, reading on screen. So reading on screen versus reading a textbook is vastly different. And one useful suggestion is when you're looking at the report, so you can see your students' words per minute. If you see that having a high words per minute, encourage them to slow down and read the material. Don't speed read, don't skim the material. And encouraging students to maybe even using full screen mode, highlight the highlight feature to remember some main points. Using the search feature when reading on screen can be really helpful. I know I use that a lot. I'm like, I know I talked about this in this document, but where is it? So I use that search feature all of the time. And then silencing all distractions is highly recommended. Adjusting the font size, the type, maybe the background color, the screen brightness. I know that when I'm working at late at night, like I have to dim my screen. And then following the 20-20-20 rule. So to reduce eye strain. So this is for every 20 minutes you read on screen, take a 20-second break. It will get something 20 feet away from you. That can help reduce that eye strain. We do have a document here as well. This is a just kind of talks about some of the tips I shared, but adjusting the font size, maybe using a digital pen. Sorry, it's kind of small, so I can't read it all, but and then also using those interactive features. So those highlight features, and then also the, increasing the font size, um, screen brightness, all of those things. Another daunting task is note taking, right? So, knowing what information to highlight, what key information you need to retain, that takes time. And just like everything else, taking notes is by far a skill, I think. And I struggle with this day to day, right? So we're on so many calls, Tara and I, and we're writing notes. We have to have like follow up emails. Maybe they asked a question that we need to get back to them about, right? So like, how can I take everything from that call being interactive, but then also knowing my takeaways and my action items? So one of the methods we wanted to highlight was the Cornell method. This is not something that we we invented, right? But it does break down notes into notes, cues, and then that summary. So it helps students summarize that material. And then taking digital notes. So there's so many different applications that you can use. Microsoft OneNote, Evernote, Notion. Things that I look for in those devices are key features. So do they sync to another device? Can I categorize things? Can I make folders? Do they have multimedia support? And then also, can I share those too? So if maybe I'm working on a group project and we all want to work asynchronously, how do we do that? So like using tools that allow people to actually update the information and then share it and collaborate with others. We do have some resources here. One is best practices for taking notes. And that just kind of talks about the digital and the handwritten. I apologize for the background noise. I'm traveling today, so that is something I can't control right now. But looking at the resources, breaking down handwritten versus taking notes. And I do both. And some people may want to do both, or some people may want to do one or the other, but kind of finding that sweet spot for yourself. In different coursework may be different, like if you're in a math course, maybe actually physically writing down those formulas would be easier instead of doing those digitally. So those are just some key things to kind of look at. Another is a note-taking template. So this one kind of goes hand in hand with that Cornell method. So breaking down all the notes. So you have on the left side, you have those key points, any questions, equation, stats, vocabulary. And then on the right, those main points. So maybe diagrams and charts. Abbreviation is huge too. So if you have a long word, you can abbreviate that. Just coming up with kind of like what works best for you. And then at the bottom, those key takeaways. Do you have action items? Do you have questions for your instructor? You can fill it out. So you can do this digitally, or, students can print this out and then they can handwrite their notes. So whatever works for them. And then looking at some study techniques. So looking at spaced repetition. So reading at increased intervals, taking breaks, looking at flashcards, looking at those word definitions, those to kind of retain the information and understand the material. Looking at active recall. So instead of that retrieval of passive review, self-quiz yourself, right? So ask yourself a question without referring back to the notes or looking at the flashcards. Do you have the answer right in your head? So strengthening that focus, looking at interleaved practice. So mixing a few of those skills during the same study session. So looking at maybe math and then maybe looking at history or, a paper you have to write. And one great resource that this is a new one we created, but this is optimizing your study space. So Tara touched on this a little bit for finding that place to study. And this one it's another 2-pager, but it has so many different steps. So if you're looking, I'm gonna make this screen a little bit bigger. But step one, self-reflection. So where do you feel the most focused? What type of environment do you need to concentrate in? Do you need background noise? Do you need silence? Do you need music? Where are you going to study? Is it going to be home? Is it going to be a local coffee shop, a library, your dorm room? Do you have the resources available? So do you have stable internet, right? Do you have all the materials that you need for your study session? And then step 4, looking at time blocking. Do you have peak hours where you can focus? And then factor in any commitments, maybe you have a job or maybe you have kids or maybe you're juggling things, but where are those peak hours where you can actually dedicate specific time to studying? And then page 2 is looking at a checklist. Bring all of the material you have with you. So laptops, chargers, snacks, water bottles. So you don't feel like you need to actually get up from the space. You have everything right there for that dedicated session. Do you have uninterrupted time, right? So making sure that you either let your roommates know or your family know that you are studying during this time and you really need to, set those clear boundaries. And then looking at testing that out and changing that if it doesn't work. So, and then reflect and refine as needed. What worked well for your chosen study environment? Did you encounter any challenges? Did you feel focused? Did you avoid distractions? So just kind of setting yourself up for success ahead of time. And so that is what this document was designed for, to kind of give that vision of prepping the space ahead of time. And then looking at strategies for actually taking exams. So before the exam, kind of go over what we just did. Where can I study? What resources do I need? Get sleep, eat a well-balanced breakfast. Sleep and nutrition are huge when it comes to making sure you have that energy and making sure that you have that focus. And then during the exams, don't speed read. Read all the instructions carefully, practice deep breathing to stay calm, having that positive mindset, and trust your instincts, right? So don't overanalyze. If you think that you have the right answer, don't overanalyze it. I know Tara and I do that with certain things, and it's just little silly things, right? Does this color look good to this font? Does this font make sense? Stuff like that. So just go with your gut, trust those instincts. And then after the exam, if you have extra time, go over your questions again. Did you answer everything? Did you skip something? And then also after your exam, depending on how you did you feel rushed? Did you feel stressed? Were there other spots where you thought you were prepared, but you really weren't? So taking all of that into consideration is really huge for long-term success. And then we have another one. Again, this is a new one. So it's a do not disturb hanger, but this can be given to students. So maybe they don't have a way to, or maybe they haven't thought about putting a door hanger on their dorm room or their room if they're living with others. But at least setting those boundaries, right? Like I need to be studying or I am sleeping, I'm getting a good night's rest before this big exam. These little things can make a big difference. So we went over a lot of things, finding that appropriate place to study, finding time to study, having that positive mindset. What is your learning style? What kind of new things can I try? Looking at that course material, making sure I'm not skimming over the material if I'm doing that on-screen reading, taking notes, reviewing the information, and then being fully prepared for your exam or your paper or whatever you have coming up. And then at the next slide, I believe we have everything linked. So all of the resources that we shared, you don't have to go back to each individual slide. These are all links. You can download them. You can share them internally. You can share them with your students. These are all student facing. These are meant to help your students. And like I said, if you have an idea of maybe a new resource that would be beneficial that you think, let Tara and I know. These are new things that we love to create. To provide value to everybody. So the next slide, I believe that's it. Yes. So we've done so many different webinars focusing on different topics. We do have another one coming up soon. We are in the process of, most of you have probably seen the advising script that we currently have that goes hand in hand with that educator report. So as you're reviewing the student report, looking at the advising script, it kind of takes the pressure off everybody, right? You don't have to use it verbatim, but it does allow you to, depending on the student's report, those strengths and those weaknesses, give some ideas on what you can, maybe action items, giving students an activity or, you know, piece of homework, right? Where kind of just encourages the students to be engaged in their report, and then making sure that they know who's there to support them, right? So we are completely doing a revamp of that advising script. So that is going to be a webinar in itself, talking about how schools can use SmarterMeasure in those advising conversations. So we do have a few minutes left before the webinar is over. So if anyone has any comments or questions, or if they want to us to refer back to anything that we talked about, please let us know. Other than that, the webinar will be shared along with the slide deck. And then new emails will be coming out on advising pretty soon.
Yes, that was the question that we did have coming in about if we would be sharing the resources. And yes, you'll have those. They'll be in your email. They'll be in the slides that are linked. Please share them, whether it's social media. Some schools have printed them out and put them in places where students may populate. Share them with your faculty, with your success coaches, achievement coaches, anyone who works one-to-one with students. These can be, we've even had schools make them their own. So this is not our content per se. We're just trying to create resources that you can share with students to give some strategies to use to help them be successful. So hopefully these resonate with you as well as your students, and we look forward to the next round. And I think, well, we haven't finalized the advising script, but we're going to layer in these resources where they apply. So you'll have that all in one place for you, the advisor or the success coach or the college navigator or the hybrid champion, anyone who's working, having those conversations with students.
Yeah, good call out, Tara, because we wanted to basically create like a one-stop shop where you're not having to refer back to a slide deck or something you downloaded. We want everything very accessible, very easily. So the advising script, all of the resources, and then pairing those with those subscales specifically. So it really is taking the work off of everybody. We're trying to make everybody's job easier. So we hope that those are valuable to you guys.
Yes. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be in touch and look forward to more of these to come.
Yes. Thank you all.